Hello everyone. Today we have with us Laksh, who is a CAT 2022 QA topper, right? And Laksh will share in this session his success mantra, how he did well, what went right for him, and how he started his preparation. That's very important. One moment, I'm just trying to hide the link. Yes, now I think we are good to start. We are live on YouTube, and as I said, we have a lot of sessions where the toppers talked about their strategy. But all of us know that QA is one subsection, right, within the CAT, where a lot of aspirants find it really difficult. So for those of you who want to do well in QA, you have with us one of our toppers of CAT 2022, and he will share every detail that you need to know to fare well in your upcoming examinations. So without me taking much time, let me hand it over to Laksh. Laksh, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good evening, sir. I'm Laksh and I scored 99.24 percentile in QA in CAT 2022.
Okay, so Laksh, right, the million-dollar question which everyone wants to hear. Uh, how did you start your preparation? I think that's most important. How do you start a QA CAT preparation?
So I started my QA preparation around February and March. I started my preparation during then and I used to keep QA for every day. Like
Okay.
I used to keep it consistent for like 1 or 2 hours. I used to go for your classes
Huh?
and I used to keep it every day and used to continue the practice till the end.
Okay. So
I
you said that
didn't
one or
degrade
two
myself
hours.
with
So basically, you were saying that you started with my classes and then you started with practice 1 or 2 hours of daily practice on an average. Is it what you were saying?
your classes and I used to revise them the next day.
You used to
Basically,
revise it
no
the
extra
next day.
material.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever we did,
Initial
you
day.
used to revise it the next day. How important do
Yes,
you
sir.
think are the basics of quads? Do you think
So
that
the
basics are
basics
the
are
most
very
important thing?
important. So the most important that builds up your interest. Once you're clear with basics, it builds up your interest, and then it feels like it's very much doable to you, and you can carry on to the later advanced questions as well. If the
Okay.
basics are not clear, you're not able to do the moderate difficult questions, which are the major portion of the quant section.
Okay. So let's talk about chapter wise. Let's say, which module did you start? Do you advise CAD aspirants to start with any specific module?
Starting, I would prefer arithmetic. It's mostly a logical thing. Like there's no much formulas involved. It keeps you interested in the entire thing, and followed by it's one of the most important. It covers almost 30 to 35%, 40% of the entire paper. So arithmetic is an important part, and it's an interesting chapter. So you can continue with that
So
in
you
the initial
started with
days.
arithmetic. What was the sequence that you followed? Arithmetic after that?
Arithmetic. Then I started with algebra, the next important thing, and then I went with geometry and PNC's modern maths and number system. I used to club all these three, and arithmetic and algebra I used to keep it different because there were two important zones which had need more focus, which
Okay. So
needed
you
more
focus
focus.
more on arithmetic and algebra. That's what you're saying, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. So let's take it even chapter wise, right? I'll deep dive further. Let's say a student wants to start with the first chapter in quants, okay? And he wants to start with, let's say, percentages. How do you suggest a student do things chapter wise? Let's say you want to finish percentages. How did you finish a specific chapter in quants?
So I went mostly with your PDFs and all,
Okay,
and the previous recordings as well, so
okay,
that I could get a much more variety of questions. I used to solve the live questions with you,
uh-huh.
and then I used to go home. I used to practice those questions as well, and I used to pick up previous year questions or previous year your sessions questions, and I
Mhm.
used to practice them as well. And with time, it I started building an interest in quants. I started with percentages, then I moved to ratio and proportions. Like everything is related gradually, so it was easier for me to connect and work on it.
Okay. And when you start, you said that you went through my live P classes, live class PDFs, then recorded PDFs and past year questions. So when you start a
Yes, sir.
particular chapter, right? Do you have a target in mind? Did you make a plan that okay, you know what? In this month I'm gonna complete 2 chapters, or in this month I'm gonna complete 3 chapters? Was there a plan in mind always?
Yes, sir. Like I used to move mostly with your schedule, honestly. Like the chapters you are doing, I'll continue with them, but also make sure that I can finish them properly. Like I have enough practice material and I'm thorough with the chapter. I used to make sure of that so that at a later stage, there's nothing like I forgot something and all. and I used to keep those practice regularly.
Okay. And then for any specific chapter, right? Let's say Quants has got 20 odd chapters. For any
Yes, sir.
specific chapter, on an average, how many questions do you think a student should practice before moving on to the next chapter?
So like for a chapter in arithmetic, I'd say at least 100 good quality questions, I'd say,
Okay.
for
So every
practice
chapter you
on
are
regular
saying that
basis.
you used to do at least 100 questions before you move to the next chapter. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Inclusive of your PDFs and all, everything.
Inclusive of my PDFs, everything included, around 100 questions per chapter before you move to the next chapter.
I used to 100.
That's a very good point for the viewers, right? I think you should really solve a variety of questions before you move to the next chapter. So Laksh,
Yes, sir.
how did you improve on time management? Was time ever a problem
So
for you?
I didn't focus on time during the initial months. I started
Okay.
focusing on time once the topics were clear, and I was confident I'll be able to solve it. And at after that stage, I used to focus on time and bring down the time as much as possible. Like
So
I
the
started
initial few
focusing
days
on
you are
time
saying that
management
the
around
concepts, the in initial few days, right, when you actually started your
initial few
preparation,
days it
time
was
you
the
never took
concept.
into consideration.
No, sir. Even if one question took me 5-10 minutes, in case even I was stuck, I didn't go to the solutions at once. I used to solve it, be whatsoever time it take. But I used to focus on solving and clearing the basics. And at a later stage, when I start giving my mocks around June, July, at that point of time when most of the portion was completed, I started with time management and used to focus on my speed more at that point of time.
Okay. And did you use the online? Do you used to use the online calculator? Have you ever used the calculator, or was it always mental maths for you?
When minimum usage of the calculator, when the numbers are too complicated, save powers and all, that will take manually, it will take much more time. I used to go for the calculator, otherwise I used to prefer mental maths.
You used to always
From
prefer
normal
mental maths.
calculations is
Okay. And
yes, sir.
did you also learn some Vedic maths techniques, or how was it? How did you improve that speed on the calculation part of it?
So I used to practice. Firstly, I started with practicing additions. Like I used to write 5 6 numbers. I used to club them, add them, add them, add them. I used to move in that circle continuously. Then I start with additions. You gradually improve your subtraction as well and multiplications as well. And for division, I used to use approximations mainly rather than solving it to the points. That I used to do.
That's very helpful. And how much time do you think a person would need to improve on the calculation speed, right? Let's say you said that you
So it was,
started with additions. So how much time did you devote
yes, sir.
per day to these random additions that you used to do?
So per day, I used to think 5 to 10 minutes were more than enough for additions.
5 to 10 minutes.
Like I used to add 10 numbers.
Okay.
Hmm.
10 numbers you
five to
used
ten
to add
minutes
in
were
10
more
minutes.
enough twice a day. And suddenly-
So
yeah.
10 minutes
And twice
twice
a
a
day, morning and evening. Yes, sir.
I think that's a wonderful takeaway. Look at what he's saying, right? 10 minutes per day, just 10 minutes of your time. You add some random numbers, and that's how you started. And Laksh, how much time did it take, right, for you to actually see a considerable improvement in your calculation speed while following this technique?
It was quite quick. I'd say 2 3 months. I was able to like
Okay.
arithmetic. खत्म होते my calculations were pretty good till that point of time.
Okay, arithmetic khatam hote hue, your calculation speed improved. Super awesome. I see a lot of people on the live chat as well.
Yes.
Please pour in your questions. Okay, whatever questions you have, just post it, and Laksh is gonna answer it for you. So Laksh, uh, how much time do you think, or probably I'll put it in another way,
So,
how much percent of the syllabus should be completed before one starts focusing on the mocks?
I'd say most of the arithmetic and algebra portion must be completed
Okay.
before starting the mocks because that's the major proportion. And if you are able to solve those in the mocks, you'll gradually improve. And while continuing with the mocks, the other topics such as modern maths, geometry could be continued thereon with the mocks itself because they are small topics and that don't hold much of the proportion of the CAT paper. So arithmetic and algebra are a major portion. You complete almost 70 80% of both of them. You can move to mocks, I'd say,
So
or
bottom
sectionals
line, the
then.
takeaway is 70 to 80% of your arithmetic and algebra you complete before you start your mocks. So Laksh, when did you start
Yes,
your
sir.
mocks? Which month did you start your mocks?
I started my mocks around July,
You start your mocks up in July
June,
and you continued
mid.
up till
Yes,
November, is it?
yes, in November.
How many
Like
mocks? How many
till
mocks did
10
you
days
write?
before. I wrote around 25 30 mocks.
Around 25 to 30 mocks. Okay. And on an
Yes,
average,
sir.
what was your mock score?
So once I was doing pretty decent, I used to score around 30 plus minus 5. It would range up to there. 30-35 k each way. It was mostly between 30 and 35.
So your marks used to vary between
And
30 to
so,
35. Okay. And what about your
yes, sir.
what
Depending.
about your percentile? In what range it used to vary?
It used to range around 90, between 90 and 100. It used to go sometime 95 plus as well. It used to sometimes drop to 90 between below 90 and below 95 as well. But it used to vary around mostly 90 to 95%.
90 to 95. And in the CAT, you scored
Yes, sir.
almost 99.3 percentile, right? So was your CAT
Yes.
percentile the highest, or have you scored more than this in the mocks as well?
I guess the cat percentile was the highest.
CAT percentile was the highest, and I think a lot of people I have interviewed, right? They tell me the same thing, that the CAT percentile that they've received is the highest. They've never received so much in the mocks. So, how do you go
Yes, sir.
about analyzing the mocks? So, first thing is, what was your
I,
mock strategy? Mock strategy, and then probably we'll focus on the analyzing part, right? So, you completed 60 to 70% of your 70-80% of your arithmetic and
yes,
algebra,
sir.
and then you started writing your mocks. So, when focusing on the mocks, right, what are the tips
Yes,
that you
sir.
will give? Probably question selection, applying the concepts. How did you go about taking the mocks?
Yes, initial days, I faced the problem that I did not wasn't able to reach the end questions, and that was my mistake. I used to solve every question step by step, step by step. I did not pick the right questions initial days. Way I used to solve every question from 1 to 22. I used to go on and on and on. So that was a mistake of mine. I gradually realized that I have to select selective questions that were doable within the time frame. So I started picking those questions gradually and improving on that. And with time, I was able to pick the questions and thoroughly check the paper and was able to pick the best set of questions
So
to
when
solve.
you see a question, right, just trying to understand, you see a
Yes,
question on your screen, let's say from time and work. Okay, you read that.
yes,
So when
sir.
you actually read the question, how much time do you spend before deciding that, okay, I'm going to pick up this question or probably skip to the next question?
So I usually give a quick glance. I used to work with familiarity on the first round.
Okay.
Like if the question was familiar, I used to go with that. If it wasn't, I used to keep it for the later part. In
Okay.
case I'll go to the entire mock, come back for the second round, and then I'll pick them. But if the questions were familiar, I used to attempt them. And in case if there was a question for which I was stuck for almost 2 to 3 minutes, in case if I was stuck for 2 to 3 minutes, I used to skip and move on to the next question. I did
Okay.
not give much time to the question anymore. 2 to 3 minutes, I don't see myself solving it. I used to skip the question.
And you mentioned about, so familiarity is something that you stress upon, right? That if the
Mhm.
question is familiar, do it, otherwise skip to the next.
Yes,
You
yes, sir.
also mentioned that you came back to such questions if time permits in round two. So can you talk about how many rounds did you solve quants questions in the mock, and for that matter in the cat as well?
So I usually went with the 2 rounds approach. I did not go to three because
Mhm,
three was too much for me.
mhm.
2 rounds worked for me. I used to go with for the first round. I used to solve the maximum possible questions I could, and I used to pick short questions, like
Okay.
not the much lengthy questions. I used to pick the short questions with minimum calculations and logical approaches. And I used to go forward with that. And in the next round, I came for the other questions, which while reading, I felt that these were doable, but these were time consuming. Then I used to pick up those questions and solve them and move forward.
So in round one, out of the 40 minutes, right, how much time you used to give in round one?
So almost I used to give around 25-30 minutes and I
Okay.
was able to solve around 8-9 questions at much most.
So first 25 to 30 minutes, round one, you solve questions which are doable and probably which are familiar. 8, 9 questions.
Yes,
And
sir.
in the last 10 to
Yes, sir.
15 minutes, it's round two, where probably you must have flagged a few questions for review. You come back to those questions, is it? That's what you were saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And
Awesome.
around from those 15 questions, I used to pick around 4 to 5 questions which were solvable in the next 14-15 minutes left.
Okay. And how good was your accuracy? How many questions did you use to attempt on an average in the box?
So my general attempt went to around 13-14 questions in the mocks.
Okay.
And out of the one or two were incorrect. Otherwise, my accuracy went pretty good. It was above 90%.
About that. And in the
Accuracy
CAT,
went.
how many questions did you attempt in the QA? And how many did you get correct?
I attempted around 14 questions and I got 13 correct. No, no, no. My bad. I got 12 I attempted 12 questions and I scored around 11 questions correct. And the one that I got wrong, that was a theta question, and hence I didn't get a negative in that as well.
Okay, so 12 questions, and out of 12, you got 11 correct, and that's more than
Yes.
sufficient for people who are listening to score a 99.3 percentile in the QA. So, Laksh, the
Yes.
next part of it, right? You talk about the mocks. So, can you also tell about how you went about analyzing the mocks?
So firstly, I used to look at the questions which I did correct, because that was something that also needs to be analyzed. I did not skip those questions, because if there was a much more quicker way, that would be helpful for me. So I used to go with the solutions with that as well, and used to analyze that as well, and also check if these questions were to be picked or not to be picked based on the difficulty level, and I used to compare it with the rest of the questions that I did not attempt. And based on that, I used to realize some questions were there which I picked, and I personally, after the mock, I realized they weren't supposed to be picked. Like there were lengthy questions or calculation intensive, or there were chances of going wrong there. So I used to analyze that as well. Then I used to move to the questions that I did not answer. And I used to look into those, the questions, easy questions that I left, moderate questions that I left, and the difficult questions that I left. The difficult questions that I left, I was happy that I left them. But the moderate and the easy one were doable ones. So I should have attempted, and I gradually improved on that, analyzing that.
So you say
And
that when you
with
analyze the mocks right in QA, it was basically a 2 or 3 step process. So initially, first few questions that you analyzed were the ones that you actually got it correct. So you look
yes,
for an
sir.
alternate
Yes,
approach if it exists.
yes,
Second one,
yes,
probably
sir.
questions which you got incorrect, right? So why it
Yes,
went
sir.
wrong. And third was
Yes, sir.
questions which you did not attempt, and for them you used to
Attempt.
categorize as easy, moderate, and difficult. And difficult ones you
Yes,
were
sir.
happy that you didn't touch them, but the easy and moderate ones, why did you miss them?
Yes, sir.
That's
Exactly.
awesome. How much time do you feel that a person should devote to analyzing the mocks?
So analyzing the mocks is important. A mock stands for around 2 hours. Analyzing should go to 6 to 7 hours. I had
Analyzing
say
the mock, you are
six,
saying should go to
five, 6 hours.
6 to 7 hours.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, that's
All the
also
three questions in it.
all the three sections together, 6 to 7
Yes,
hours. That's a very good
yes, sir.
takeaway. Very good takeaway. And Laksh, right? Many a times in QA, one frequent problem with students encounter is they forget. They did percentage in the month
Yes,
of, let's say, February, and come month of
yes,
October, they will like, I can't even recall what I did in February. So how do you
yes, sir.
tell a student that how should they be? Because the syllabus is vast, right? 2021 chapters, so much of content is there. How do you think that they should be able to do things such that they don't forget?
So after clearing the basics in the initial months, I'd suggest after you start giving the mocks, at the during the end months, that is during the end 3 months, I'd say start giving yourself mixed practice from every variety. Like there were around 20 21 chapters. Every day, even if you give 5 questions each, that's 100 questions a day. So that clears everything. Even if you give 10 chapters, 5 questions each, that's 50 questions of practice for you. So that was, it revises your concepts as well, and it doesn't make you forget. You start revising your concepts as well, and it gives you the variety, the kind of you expect in that, and also sectional mocks. That also helps. Sectionals helps in this so that you get a wide variety with a mixture of all the questions. So you are able to solve more, and giving yourself a mixed variety is most important
So mixed
during the
variety, the
end
mixed
months.
bag, right? And what Lux just mentioned is
Yes, sir.
you used to revise it in such a way that if there are 20 chapters and you need to do revision, what do? You parallel pick up 5 questions from every chapter. So 5 questions from every chapter means 100 questions per day. And the other good part is more than 100 questions is that you are in touch with each of these chapters on a daily basis. So there will never be
Yes,
an
sir.
occasion when you will say that, you know what, I did probability some 3 months back. That occasion will never come because you are doing probability on a regular basis. So let's write another
Yes, sir.
thing. In quants, a lot of students come with a my pre mindset, right? That I'm not good in quants. What is your
Yes,
advice
sir.
to such students?
So even I had that mindset at some point of time. Like I didn't have 11, 12th as maths. Some complain like that. But what happens is it's basically maths. I'd say it's below 10th. It's level till 10th. That kind of maths comes, and it's just a step ahead of that. But with gradual practice, it's very much doable and it's very much scoreable. Like cons is one of the sections where you can score the most and you can achieve a lot.
And how much time do you think a student should put on an average to prepare for the CAT? So you said you
So
started in
initially,
February. You started in February. What
yes,
did
sir.
you
Yes, sir.
February? So
Yes, sir.
initial three
Almost
months, how
February.
much time did you spend?
So initial 3 months, I used to focus like every day I used to go for quants.
Okay.
Like quants was a weaker section of mine. I used to treat it like that. It's a difficult section. So I used to focus on it every day and keep my practice regular. However, for DILR and VRC, I used to do it on alternate days. One day VRC, one day DILR. I used to skip on that. And in quants, I used to go like initial days I used to go slow and I used to make start building my interest. That's the first step. If you pile yourself with too much of quants in the initial days, it will start to be boring and you'll gradually lose interest. That won't give you marks at the end. But if you keep it consistent, like even an hour a day or 2 hours a day, just one course and like 30 minutes of practice, one class and 30 minutes of practice, that's also enough in the initial days. To keep it consistent for that time till you start building interest. Once you build interest, you can push that hours to more.
So when you say more, to what extent? So initially I understand around 1 hour probably is enough. And after that?
Full-fledged, it's around 2 to 3 hours you can give to quants. Like on a break of 3 hours, you could go for 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours for quants.
So you are saying that after first 3-4 months are over, the last probably 4-5 months, you spend around 3 hours on an average on quants.
Yes, sir. Almost 1.5 hour for your classes, and the other part of it with practice, inclusive with previous year questions. Give yourself mixed variety of questions. These parts of five questions जो होते हैं, you continue with that so that you get a mixed variety.
So 1.5 hour of class आप करते थे और उसके बाद another 1.5 घंटा you used to do self study, right? That's what you were saying. Got it.
In quants,
any book also that you followed? Any book, कोई book market में जो available है जो students को follow करना चाहिए quants के लिए?
I didn't follow any, so I went with your questions, mostly your PDF questions.
Okay.
The previous years, your questions only from previous years as well, and also PYQs, mostly PYQs. And these were the only materials that I focused on. And inclusive of groups, there were many groups of Telegram that I was added to. So there were questions popping into that as well. So I should solve them as well. Otherwise, no, I didn't follow any book, honestly.
Any book? Okay, awesome. Because a lot of students keep asking me, especially people who have just joined, right? So, कौन सा book लेना चाहिए? And if I tell them no book is required, probably it's not that people don't believe, right? And it's coming from a topper. I think at least you can believe now that if you don't need books, if you attend the classes and solve every question, right? That's important.
Your PDFs were enough.
My PDFs are enough. Okay, that's what you were saying, right? That's awesome. So, Laksh, was it your first attempt in the CAT or was it your second attempt?
Second attempt.
Second attempt. What is your first attempt quants percentile?
So I scored between 97 to 98 last year.
Last year you scored between 97 to 98 percentile, and this year it went up to 99.3 percentile. Oh, awesome. Well, let's also give us a quick background of yours, right? Your brick profile.
So
okay.
I'm a fresher and I'm from West Bengal, Siliguri. I have done my BBA in finance.
BBA.
I passed out in 2021. Yes.
2021. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And do you have any work experience?
So I'm a fresher.
You are a fresher. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Also, you have scored really, really well in your LRDI as well, right? I'm just going to ask you a few things about LRDI as well. You have scored 96 plus in LRDI as well, right? So in LRDI, how do you think LRDI is different from quants? What extra or how different was your preparation strategy for LRDI compared to quants?
So LRDI was a completely new topic for us. Initial days, there were problems in that section. We weren't able to understand what's going on. That was the main problem we faced. I honestly faced during the initial days. कि पता ही नहीं चलता what's going on in that. How you have to start with the caselet, that was the most important thing. Like later on stages were still doable, but starting off the caselet was very, very difficult in the initial days. But gradually LRDI needs practice, and with regular practice, you will be able to crack it.
Okay. And did your preparation strategy change for LRDI compared to quants?
Preparation strategy for LRDI, so I used to comparatively a bit less time than quants in the initial days, but at a later stage, I used to balance out QA, VRC, and LRDI with equal amount of time on a gradual, like 2-3 hours, 2-3 hours, 2-3 hours I used to give. And later on, I started studying with a strategy that you suggested 40 minutes, 40 minutes. Like the paper pattern of CAT, I used to focus like that and sit 2 hours at a stretch. And that was a that was a pattern I started following during the end days, so that I got familiar with that mindset to attempt the paper. Okay,
that's good to know. That's good to know. So between LRDI and quants, initially you felt that the initial months LRDA was more difficult because you felt that
Yes, sir.
कैसे start करें वो समझ में नहीं आ रहा था, but quants में कम से कम
The
एक दो
starting
लाइन तो
point.
पूछना था.
Yes.
But
The
before the
starting
CAT,
point was very difficult.
the starting point was very
Yes,
difficult.
sir.
Okay. And what was your LRDI percentile in the first attempt?
First attempt, sir, it went pretty bad last year. It was around 56 percentile or something.
56 percentile, and this year it is 96 plus. So 56
Yes.
percentile to a 96 plus percentile in LRDI. That itself speaks volume of your effort and your sincerity, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm looking at YouTube, right? If you have questions, please shoot. So Laksh, my final few questions, right?
Yes,
Over
sir.
2 lakh aspirants aspire to write the CAT every year. Okay. What
Yes,
are
sir.
some of the mistakes? Because you know what, it's always good to learn from someone else's mistakes than make mistakes myself, right? Can you tell us some of the mistakes that you made during your preparation and probably during the CAT as well, which you don't want our students to make?
So, firstly, the most important thing is being consistent. Like there are times after you start preparing, initial days में वो there's a much more of वो जोश ज्यादा रहता है initial days पे, but gradually with time you start losing interest at some point of time during
Correct.
this August September, and you feel like quitting. That was a time even I sometimes felt that, but if you have put in those months, you should keep continuing, and another 2 3 months and you'll go through. So you should focus on keeping it consistent. That was one of the most important thing that you should do. Don't ever stop studying. Like keep it consistent. If you need a break, take a break, but don't break the flow. Keep continuing this. Keep continuing your studies. Have fun, but studies at aside, you should keep them as well. So keep yourself consistent and don't jump. Don't prefer. What I mean to say is balance the all the sections equally. Like you need to study VRC as well, DILR as well, and QA as well. Don't keep your focus on one subject or two subjects. Balance out all the three, and you have to study all the three to clear the sections as well.
Okay. And if given a chance, right? If I give you a chance, and I have a time machine, and I ask you to go back to the time machine, and probably you can redo some of the things. Two things which you would redo,
Yes,
which you think that could have been done better, especially in quants and LRDA.
yes, sir.
Anything that you would
I'd
want to do
say
differently? If I give you a time machine to go back, now that you are a 99.30, you might have ended up with a 100 percentile, right? What one or two things you would have done differently would have made you a 100 percentile?
during the end days there were chapters that I started missing out. Like there were small chapters like I'd say trigonometry, coordinate geometry. That was small chapters, but during the end times with pressure, you start leaving on those things. Just in case ki, the main questions don't leave out. But those are chapters that are very doable and you need to score in them. So firstly, I go and revise them as well thoroughly. The other thing is DILR. I'll give me more variety of questions. Like there are sets which thinking as difficult we used to skip, and analyzing that was very difficult sometimes because there were very odd questions. But the kind of paper setters are there are questions which are very difficult in this, so I'll prefer going to the final question and preferring more questions as well, more
Okay.
giving me more variety, and the difficult questions as well I'll try to solve more of it.
So I think the takeaway is probably you would want to revise those small chapters a bit more if given a chance.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. That's an interesting answer, and I think a takeaway for many of you. So people in YouTube, right? If you have comments, please shoot. If you have anything to ask to Laksh, right? Please shoot your question, and Laksh is gonna answer it for you. Any question that you have from the audience, we'll be happy to answer. Yes, and Laksh, one more thing, right? So now
Huh?
that you have done so well in QA, you have
Yes.
scored so well, and what do you think? So, are you targeting some of the best B schools?
Yes, sir, surely am, and I'm also preparing for ZAT right now,
Okay,
and I'm targeting another B schools as well. I'll try to get in one of the top B schools of the country. That
that,
I'll be very happy for.
that's awesome. That's great to know. And how do you think the preparation for the ZAT, right, is gonna be different for the ZAT QA? How do you think ZAT QA? What are the things that you are doing differently for ZAT QA as you prepare for it now?
What I find different in ZAT and CAT is that CAT is mostly time based, whereas ZAT is more of conceptual based. The questions where a mixed variety of questions are there. Like in a single question, there are mix of 2 3 chapters, different chapters are inclusive, and they club those chapters and make a question. So it's in that it's not much about time, but it's the kind of questions that are, and you need to attempt those. In CAT, it's mostly time based. So focusing on time is a major important role, whereas in that, more about the concepts.
Okay, got it, got it. I think that's it. Laksh, your final words for your CAT 2023 aspirants. Your final words before we close this session.
So I'll say keep practicing, keep a flow, be consistent, and don't in the middle, don't quit anyway. That's the most important takeaway that I'll give. Say, and yes, just be consistent. Like there's nothing in the middle. Don't drop it. If you have, if you want to crack it, you'll have to study and keep consistent. Be consistent. That's
If I say something, just tell me if you agree or disagree. There is no substitute to hard work when you are preparing for the CAT exam.
yes,
Do you agree with
no,
that? No,
yes,
right? Yeah, I mean, you
I
will agree
agree.
with that, right? Absolutely. So I think that's the takeaway. There is no shortcut to success. You got to work hard. And if you're ready to put in that effort, the numbers will validate, right? Will validate your hard work. So many congratulations, Laksh, once again. Many congratulations. You are one of India's topper in QA, 99.30 percentile, right? And that's not a joke, right? 99.30 percentile. Many of us aspire, dream, and you have achieved it. Many
Yes,
congratulations. And I hope that you will get into your dream B school. And I'll get to have one more round of talk with you like this, wherein the topic will be how to crack B school interviews, right? That's gonna be our
sure,
next topic, and hopefully you're gonna give me a chance to conduct that. With that note, thank you,
sure.
Laksh. Wish you the best, and
Thank you.
thanks again. And learners, I hope the session was interesting and you got to learn a lot of it. Thank you.